I'm a big Post-its person. I have whiteboard walls in my office. Like I write everything down just to kind of like get it out of my brain and make it kind of make sense. And I think that has helped me just stay really organized. And I take all of that, go have conversations with my manager and kind of discuss expectations because I think being able to have that conversation on expectations, whether that is daily expectations for the week, for the cycle, kind of like just my expectations as a role outside of like admissions numbers, just kind of having a conversation and dissect all of that. That consistent action has really helped me grow in my position.
Welcome to Mission Admissions. I'm your host, Jeremy Tears. This is the show designed to help you grow, both professionally and personally, in the fast-paced world of higher education. Every other Tuesday, I sit down with senior leaders, new professionals, and difference makers from across higher ed and beyond, where we'll share tips and strategies related to challenging topics like student recruitment, leadership, customer service, enrollment marketing, and time management. So if you're looking for practical advice and conversations that actually move the needle, this show's for you. Grab your notepad or fire up your notes app, and let's get into it. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tears, and this is episode 89 of the Mission Admissions podcast. And one of the things I've done at different points on the pod each year is bring on talented young higher ed professionals who are finding ways to make a big impact early in their career. Last month, the Michigan Association for College Admissions Counseling honored my guest today, Sarah Pelyhes, with its annual Rising Star Award. Sarah is a first-year counselor and the International Recruitment Coordinator at Kalamazoo College there in Michigan. And today, we're going to discuss some of the lessons she's learned over year one and just, how to grow in this industry as a new professional. So welcome to the show, Sarah.
Hi, Jeremy. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
What did I want to be when I was a kid? Honestly, it was back and forth between something realistic and then something very much a dream. When I was a kid, I desperately wanted to be a zoo veterinarian. I love the or like wildlife veterinarian. I love the idea of being with animals and traveling all around the world. I love National Geographic and the Travel Channel. Then sometime along the lines, I was like a doctor. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this super STEM heavy, like something that seems more practical. And well, here I am.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out. And as somebody who has a teenage daughter who is 16 and about to go through all of this over the next 2 years, it's been interesting to watch her change her mind. And she's kind of stuck on something now. So we'll see if it lasts over the last 2 years of high school here. What was it then? You go off to college and ultimately, right, decide you're going to start your professional career in higher ed. What is it that drew you to higher ed and college admission, Sarah?
Well, to be honest, I didn't even kind of get myself drawn to higher ed, well, more of the admissions side until later on. When I was in college, I knew very desperately that I wanted to study abroad, and I made that a very big priority. And then I started working in the study abroad office at my alma mater. And that was where I kind of fell in love with it. I attended Hope College. I worked in their study abroad office and I loved it. I was like, I want to be someone supporting students doing study abroad work. So I moved and I taught ESL and I found in Madrid, found a master's program in global higher education. And I thought the focus of that was going to be study abroad. I designed as my master's thesis a whole study abroad program in Barcelona and southern Spain and the Mediterranean, focusing on migration. And I just so happened to have one class on international admissions. And I was like, you know what? That actually seems so fascinating. And so when I moved back home and I saw the job at K available, I took a chance. And I'm absolutely loving it. Not at all what I anticipated. It was just like a blip, but I'm very happy to be where I am.
I feel like everybody says that when they start in higher ed. It's like, yeah, I didn't know what this was going to be, and it wasn't what I anticipated. So I am curious. You're coming up, you got, I think, a couple of months left, right on that 1 year anniversary. What has been the biggest, I'll say, surprise for you, or just, yep, wasn't thinking this was going to be part of the job description that you've, done over the last 10 months or so?
I don't think I realized when I stepped into this position just how much I'm kind of really emotionally counseling families sometimes. I anticipated the show of talking about the school, connecting with students on that front, but I feel like parents are so involved nowadays, which is not a bad thing. It's just reality. And so, what does it look like to not only connect with students on like their interests, which I feel like is very easy to do at my age? I'm not that much older than them, but then also being able to translate that and connect with families that way. I don't think I anticipated that as much, and I'm kind of enjoying it to have that more emotional, social emotional aspect to the career.
Ultimately, when you think about just the award that you got at MACAC, which I'm assuming was a total surprise. If it wasn't, please share it here in a second. But like, what is it about that award, Sarah, that you ultimately think like people in the industry recognized about you that they were like, yep, Sarah Pelyhes is the winner of this award this year?
Truthfully, I think most of it came from just passion and willingness to learn. I mean, as you mentioned, I have barely set my foot into the door of admissions and higher ed. So there's not a lot of super measurable success in the traditional ways that admissions looks at success. And so what I really think it is just me diving in and jumping into so many different things, whether that is doing international travel and jumping in with different groups and connecting with people and counselors all over the world and also domestically, whether my biggest territory domestically is northern Michigan, so getting to know students and counselors up Traverse City, basically north of Cadillac. But then also being able to, if I'm not sure of a question, do my research, but then also connect with people and ask questions and just be able to get the foundation of trying to build as much industry knowledge as I can in a short amount of time so that I can make impact and I can make wise decisions and have good conversations with people as I step into that space.
Where do you think that work ethic that you just talked about and just your internal motivation, where does that come from?
Well, I think it's a mixture of 2 things. My dad is a self-described workaholic, and he pours himself into his job, and so I think I always had that example and kind of that expectation to try really hard. I mean, I was definitely an overachiever when I was in high school, and that translated into college of just wanting to get myself involved, being a member of my community, and I think a lot of that also circled back to a little bit of, like, intrinsic passion. I really don't have a good work ethic if I am not passionate about something, or I don't see something as going into something that I deem worthy or passion as a passion of mine. So for me, I'm very globally minded. I like building international community and supporting international students that way. So being really like learning very fast and putting my effort into that, it feels natural. And I have a lot of work ethic to do that because I'm motivated. If you were asking me to, I don't know, try and learn a new video game, not super passionate about that. So like the work ethic's not going to be there.
You talked about building community there and how much you enjoyed doing that. And obviously, colleges and universities talk a lot, right? In the college search process, domestic, international recruitment, both sides, the importance of community, and students are looking for that. Give me an idea and give the audience an idea, Sarah. What do you think ultimately goes into building a strong community? What does that look like?
I mean, first biggest thing is communication and just opening that lines and being honest and kind of going past a surface shallow level when you can. I always try and be transparent with students. I don't try and oversell. Work at Kalamazoo College, so I don't try and oversell Kalamazoo College to be something that might not be a good fit for them. I want to have that conversation, make a space where they feel like they can actually confide and trust me with their decision making. But I also think it looks a lot like putting yourself out of a little bit of convenience. I think you have to kind of inconvenience yourself to build community. For example, when I was on my international travel, I ended up staying because the only option for this mother to come and meet me and build that community and have that connection was she couldn't meet me until 9 p.m. That is typically outside of my working hours. But like she traveled forever to come meet me, and I traveled all the way to be in Vietnam, so we're gonna make that effort. It might be inconvenient at the moment, but like that is how connection happens, and to build that community and to be able to continue going forth.
When you enjoy or have that passion that you talked about for whatever it is you do, I just feel like, I had my guest on the last episode before you, Harrison Soup Campbell, and he just said, Jeremy, like it doesn't feel like work for me. Like he goes, 99% of the time, none of this feels like work. And so I feel like one of the things, Sarah, that I talk with a lot of, especially young professionals about is, habits and routines. And I know one of the things that you pride yourself, I've heard on, is just your organization, and being able to ultimately just stay on task and stay focused on the things that you want to get done every day. And so I'm curious, what are some of the habits and routines that you feel like have helped you stand out and have some of this early career success?
It's so funny whenever I get asked about habits or routines because I don't really feel like I'm a big routine-oriented individual. I feel like every morning looks a little bit different, for me, but I think it's more of, like, actions that I take, and maybe it's not necessarily every single day, but just things that I do. Again, it always circles back to communication. I feel like the biggest thing is communicating with who is my manager and basically my supervisor, and just talking them through what I'm planning on getting done, whether that's that day or that week, just so they have an idea of what I'm hoping to accomplish and they can check back in with me on that. I do well with a little bit of accountability. If I don't have deadlines, it is a struggle for me. Um, and I also think just taking the time to actually create a plan, because if I don't have a plan, I kind of just live in this like amorphous blob of like I'm not really sure which direction to go. I'm a big post-its person. I have whiteboard walls in my office. Like I write everything down just to kind of like get it out of my brain and make it kind of make sense. And I think that has helped me just stay really organized. I take all of that, go have conversations with my manager, and kind of discuss expectations, because I think being able to have that conversation on expectations, whether that is daily expectations for the week, for the cycle, kind of like just my expectations as a role outside of like admissions numbers, just kind of having a conversation and dissect all of that. That consistent action has really helped me, I feel like, grow in my position, just because it helps me have a foundation and have some sort of guiding to be able to do the day-to-day work.
I'm going to hit pause for a second to share some awesome and exciting news. If you or your team are looking for practical strategies to crush operational bottlenecks and scale engagement with AI, then the Engage Summit 2026 in Charlotte needs to be your destination this June 15th through the 17th. From hands on sessions to main stage keynotes that show how AI is transforming enrollment and retention, the Engage Summit is the place to level up your institution's game in ways you probably didn't realize were possible. You'll walk away with tools, frameworks, and connections that actually move the needle, and people who will help keep pushing you forward long after the conference ends. The good news, spots are still available for the conference, and here's the even better news. Enrollify listeners can get 50% off the ticket price. Yes, half off. Just head to engage.element451.com and use the promo code Jeremy50. That's Jeremy 50. Now, back to the show. And to be clear, that's something that your supervisor, I'll say, started to give you that clarity, or is that something you said, you know what, I'm just going to go ask and say, this is what I need for me to be able to accomplish the things that ultimately like are in my job description?
I think it's been a mixture of both. We have established like every other week check-ins, and so I think that's good for me. I can just kind of like talk through things when I'm unsure, but then I'm also able to. She will either ask me what I'm doing sometimes when she is, talking to presidential committee, talking to the board, and wants to have an idea concrete of what I've been doing, bullet points, and we can have that conversation then. And sometimes I just to peace of mind, get it out of my brain and make sure someone, especially when I'm traveling, has an idea of what's going on in my life when I'm not actively in the office for a month. Give her bullet points of kind of like what I'm hoping to get done and accomplished, and just also have expectations of, well, I am not going to be in the office for a month. I have my vision of what this trip should mean and what I should be doing on this trip, but she might have a completely different vision. And I just want to make sure that we are somewhere in the middle ground or meeting each other's expectations that way.
What advice then would you give, especially a young professional working in admissions, or any honestly department on a campus, Sarah, around how do I, if I don't have that same type of dialogue with my supervisor right now, and I know it would be helpful, and he or she just for whatever reason isn't prioritizing it or bringing it up, like where do I start? How do I go have that conversation? Because I feel like it would help me be more productive with my time.
It could just look like talking to them about what it would look like to do something like a check-in. And it doesn't need to be, I'm sitting down with you 3 times a week. It doesn't need to look like I'm sitting down with you weekly. I mean, maybe that is what it works for you. I don't know. That's a conversation to have. I think biweekly or even monthly sometimes as a starting point, and then also kind of having that conversation of, I do think that I need this support and you need this clarity. I think it would be better for both of us of like you understanding how I am fulfilling my role and then also me understanding how you want me to fulfill my role. Because it could look like, all right, maybe if I'm working remotely, sending my to-do list for the day and just making sure that they have that. And maybe they didn't ask for it, maybe they don't respond to it, maybe they just thumbs up a Teams message. I don't know. But they at least have an idea of what you're doing versus just existing in this morph. I know it also comes to I don't wanna be that, like, nagging supervisee of, like, I don't wanna be coming too much and feel like a nuisance, and I think it also comes with a little bit of constructed conversation on your end and not necessarily expecting them to guide the conversation the entire time. Come with questions. I regularly will be like, "Okay, I wanna talk about travel planning, I wanna talk about this scholarship, I wanna talk about what does next year and communication plan look like?" And then have those conversations and kind of have that ready for them so they aren't necessarily having to add that work onto their plate too. Feel like it gets received better.
And I love that the way you described it, I would call it's you being proactive, right? It's
Mhm.
you taking ownership of your territory, or in this case, right? Again, all of the international recruitment responsibilities that you have. And there is no one way, I don't think, for anybody listening to do it. But to Sarah's point, like, if you're not getting that and you feel like it would be helpful from your supervisor, the only way that changes, right, is if they figure that out on their own, which probably isn't going to happen in most cases, or if you go and you do what Sarah just encouraged you to do, which is just say, hey, I feel like I could use this extra support. Here's why. Like, can we figure out what that looks like for us? Communication wise, I would argue you're probably in the minority of Gen Z young professionals who know how to effectively communicate with a whole bunch of different people and be willing to step out and start a conversation with their boss and all of that. Like, how has your communication evolved and your ability to do that, do you feel like, over the last even few years since you graduated college?
Well, growing up, I always had that confidence of being able to talk to adults. I feel like as a kid, I was always the youngest in my family, so I was always sitting at my older siblings' events, and so I would sit with my mom, and I would talk to people older than me all the time. And I got natural and comfortable having those conversations, and that kind of led with me growing up. And then as I transitioned into my first role after I graduated in teaching ESL, I worked with kids that were primarily anywhere from 4 to 10 years old. So you just kind of like learn to adjust kind of how you talk. And I feel like somewhere along the line, I learned how to talk to people of different age groups, which helped me connect with them across the line, which I will say adolescents and like teenagers were kind of like the weird gap that I never actually technically worked with. So that's been like a new of like, well, obviously I don't want to talk to you too much like you have all these expectations as an adult, but I also am not wanting to treat you like a child. So it's like, let's find that balance. But in terms of like managerial roles, I think I'm still learning it. I feel like I have a lot of confidence. Again, I am grateful to have a father who taught me a lot of those things growing up and told me expectations. He was in managerial roles, and I guess I kind of like heard what his expectations of were of people, of having proactivity, seeing people doing things on their own, having a little bit of guidance and a plan, I feel like is always what I heard from him. And so I kind of took that when I transitioned into my role and just kind of leaned into it and it got received well. I think questions are a big thing. I feel people can be a little bit nervous to ask questions or they might not know what questions to ask, which is its own different ball game, but just lean into it. And
I would be also curious to ask you, because I'm sure you've dealt with it. I know I deal with it. I know all of us as humans deal with failure. So, what do you do when you ultimately fail or struggle, Sarah? Like, what's your process for that?
oof. Well, I feel grateful in the fact that within this career, I don't feel like I've had a massive failure yet because I haven't really necessarily been in the career field long enough for that. But just thinking back on other times in my life, I think the biggest thing is just processing how I feel in the moment of recognizing my failure. I'm a pretty emotional human being while also being logical. I am gonna feel stress, I'm gonna feel anxious, I'm gonna feel a lot of shame and guilt around that, and I think I just need to sit there and kind of reflect a little bit on what is gonna be the best course of action for me? Because sometimes it is acknowledging those emotions, acting on that, having a conversation. I've had it where I was like, "Oh, shoot, I totally messed up having this conversation with this family. Maybe it was not as productive. They are not happy with me." And I'm like, "Oof, that's not a good place to be." I've definitely had I've had those conversations. Let's talk about it and own it up and talk with my supervisor, talk with a colleague about, okay, this is not great. How can I be better in the next time? And then how can I also follow up to help feel a little bit better about that situation and also just make sure that they know I'm still here to support them even if I didn't do my best work. So other times it could look like, oh, that was a failure and I am feeling not great about it, but if I ruminate on it, I'm going to go down an overthinking rabbit hole. And sometimes it just looks like doing something that's going to divert your attention. If your office allows you, 10-minute walk, walk around the block, get that out of your system, let it run back so you can come back and think about it. Sometimes it looks like, all right, you know what? Throw me into an info session. Let me talk it out with people, go into a routine that I know my body feels good in without having to think and ruminate on this other thing. And then just after I have been able to just let the emotions run course, kind of work with it as a misdirection and a learning opportunity and really figure out how can I move forward with that and go from there.
Do you feel like there's any added, I'll say, pressure, expectations on you, Sarah, now that you've, quote unquote, been labeled this rising star?
I mean, yes and no. I feel like my office and my management is wonderful and they're very clear of supporting me and really just telling me that they are proud of the work that I've been doing and they're excited about the direction that I am going with international. And it seems like yes, they obviously want me to continue growing and doing well and moving forward and establishing good processes with international and building those connections. But they seem for the most part pretty happy with where we are. It seems like a good progress and I feel grounded with them. I think it's my own internal problems. I think it's my own anxiety and expectations that's just like, all right, now you got to perform. Now you got to excel. You have this label of like, oh, I'm a rising star. And it's like, well, now I feel like I have to live up to that and like have this success. And I'm like, what does that success look like? Is that the same success that other people are thinking of? And so I'm trying to talk myself down from that ladder and just move in with like, all right, keep making good progress. What you're doing is the right way moving forward.
When was a moment this year where you kind of realized, Sarah, like, I'm not just doing my job, but like I'm actually making an impact?
There's one student that I started working with probably back in September. I got to meet their sister on campus, and she was advocating for them a big time. And when they applied, they're like, I don't know if financially I'm going to be able to make Kalamazoo College work. That's a big question for a lot of international students. And I just worked with them. We had conversations about what are outside funding opportunities, what are other scholarship opportunities here on Kalamazoo College's campus that we can make work. And so, like, he applied for our full tuition scholarship. First time around, it didn't work out, but we ended up having some other students back out. And so he got re entered into the pool, and we had that conversation. And I talked with the student on the phone so many times and by the end of it, like me and the rest of the scholarship committee were like, this student's dedicated. We are able to bring them onto campus. And to see the excitement both from his parents as well as him and then his sister, like I got communication from all of them. It's just like to be able to support that family and that community and making their higher ed goals a reality, that felt pretty amazing. And I can't wait for them to be on campus in the fall.
I love that for you because, I know how I feel when things like that happen for me and, again, for anybody listening, I mean, I think it's just a good reminder of like why we do some of the things we do in higher ed, right? Because again, just like that made you feel amazing, like it's just hard to describe sometimes, but yeah, you just have those moments where you're just like this is why I do it, right? And it's just fun. It's fun and I want more of that for you and I want more of that for all of our listeners. Sarah, the last thing I do on every episode is something I call fun rapid fire. So I'm just going to give you a handful of things and I want you to give me some quick feedback on each one. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Rumor has it you like to shop a lot. So where's your favorite place to shop?
My favorite place to shop would probably be this boutique in my college town called Gazelig.
Speaking of Hope College, where you went, which is the best coffee shop there? Lemon Jello's 205 Coffee Bar, Kin Coffee House.
Lemon Jellos. Tough call with Kin, but lemon Jellos.
Gen Z word or phrase you're so over and like wish people would stop saying.
Probably that 8 is probably the least one that I like to use, or giving.
Okay.
Sometimes I lean into that one, I'm guilty, but it's getting old.
Place you've traveled to anywhere in the world that really just left you completely amazed, obviously in a good way.
Vietnam. I love the culture, the people, the food, everything about it.
Song that you know all the words to. What is it?
Fergalicious.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yep.
Last one. If you could have a superpower, Sarah, what superpower do we want?
Oh, multilingualism, 100%.
I love that. My daughter wants to be able to do multiple languages. She's doing Spanish in high school. She has nephews that are Korean, and so she's starting to learn some Korean things. She's in her K-pop phase as a
That's
16-year-old.
awesome.
So she's like, Dad, I'm going to be able to speak 3 languages by the time I graduate high school. And I'm like, so there's definitely some fun there. Well, Sarah, I just appreciate you being on and sharing, just your experience so far as a young professional in this. I think there's a lot of things that are going to be helpful for the audience, regardless of where they're at in their career, but especially for new professionals. And so I just wish you all the best, and I look forward to the next time we connect.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Mission Admissions. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's the largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.